This continuous battle in Nigeria that has to do with tribal supremacy will be the end of the Nigerian unity, whether we like it or not. IBB released a book in the last 1 week, and we can see how that book has rattled the Fulani hegemony in the north. So many of the Islamic clerics, so many of the northern politicians have been calling for an outright ban of that book, because that book exposed the 1966 coup as not being an Igbo coup. We must understand that one of the agenda that has guaranteed the positions of the Fulanis for sitting at top of the Nigerian politics is because they have been running a successful campaign. In fact, a campaign of calumny against the Southeasterners. Ever since the 1966 coup happened and subsequent government, the Igbos have never been given a shot at the presidency. It has always been that campaign that they chorus. They re-chorus it, they sing it every election period, that the Igbos can never be trusted with power because they were the ones that committed the 1966 coup. Now, this revelation that was made by IBB in his recent book, which is titled is Journey of His Service or whatever the name is, now some disgruntled elements who are planning to remain and sustain the Fulani hegemony are now calling for an outright ban. That this cannot be. Why will IBB at this stage come out and say that is not the case for 1966? That why is it trying to spoil their market? Because on social media, you will see now that what is trending is the 1966 coup was actually a coup that was staged to favor Obafemi Awolowo. In fact, some youths are now saying that 1966 coup wasn't an Igbo coup, but indeed it was a Yoruba coup. That it was Ademoyega that led the coup. Kaduna Nzogu was a co-conspirator. In fact, Kaduna Nzogu was not an Igbo man. He was a Deltan man. That if they can say that Kaduna Nzogu is an Igbo man, then definitely, indeed, Mariam Babangida should also be seen as an Igbo woman. These are the campaigns and these are the agendas, the new conspiracy coming out from the northern oligarchs, that it seems that Ibrahim Babangida has been bitten by the Igbo mosquito, because they cannot understand what he is trying to derive. That a story that everybody has come to believe and have accepted, that even the Igbos have accepted the 1966 coup to have been perpetrated by their own children. Now, why will IBB, after over 50 years later, will now come out and say that, oh, that 1966 coup that I participated in, it was never an Igbo thing. That it wasn't. That indeed, that they did a campaign just to ensure that the Igbos, because they were scared of, go and read the book. IBB in that book literally said that the reason why that campaign has been there was because Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, they were unalived in that operation. And because of that that was why they kept on, echoing that coup was an Igbo coup. That in fact, there were some Igbo men that were killed in that coup, but they intentionally covered all those events of where Igbo men were killed. That what they needed to do was, in their mosques, in their place of religion, in their place of gatherings in the north, when they were about to strike a year later, or should I say approximately 9 months later after the first coup that happened in January, they started running a campaign that the Igbos, because of this, must never be allowed to test power ever again in Nigeria. Therefore, the Fulanis now seek the help of the British. You see that the British became the mouthpiece of the northern oligarchs. The British now started pushing various agenda in all media outlets. In all media outlets, they started saying that, oh, the 1966 coup was done by the Igbos, that why wasn't Nnamdi Azikiwe, why was he not killed? That they tipped him off. They told him to go into the sea, that he shouldn't come back until after 3 months. And, you know, immediately the BBC also caught up with Isaac. They started asking him, oh, where were you when this thing happened? He said, well, he was only on vacation, that, it was a coincidence. So everything now worked in favor of that agenda. And that agenda became openly successful as we know it. Because ever since when we have our first republic, that Nnamdi Azikiwe became a ceremonial president, we have never for any time had an Igbo that would get close to that presidential seat. We can see that it was the same campaign they used against Peter Obi in 2023. In 2023 in the north, they were saying that, okay, don't give Igbo man power. If you give him power, what happened in the 1966 is what will happen again. They will do everything to, to terminate all the oppositions, or should I say all other tribes leaders. That is their intention. So they ran that campaign, and that is an hate speech, an hateful campaign speech, a campaign of calumny, a campaign that would dehumanize a certain tribe. Something that has happened over 50 to almost going to 60 years. Nigeria is approximately 65 years, thereabouts, or there will be 65 years this year. Now, Ibrahim Babangida felt the guilt on his heart. It was becoming too heavy. The guilt was becoming too heavy. And he's looking at his grave now, because I think Babangida is almost going to 90 now. He should be in his 80s, his mid-80s. And he felt, man, I don't think I can live with this. I don't think I can live with these lies. I'm not going to allow these lies to keep peddling. You know what? Let me say it. And he said it in his book. He said, this, according to what I saw, as one of the actors in that scenario, that coup was never an Igbo coup. That indeed was a coup that was carried out by revolutionary leaders. Their intention was to wipe out corrupt leaders. Because then there were allegations that all our leaders in the First Republic, aside from our Lord who was in jail, every other person, Ladoke Akitola, Tafawa Balewa, the Saudana, all of them were now becoming, detached from the people. They became high and mighty. People could not access them anymore. Okoti Ebe was living lavishly. These were their ideas and these were their beliefs. So they wanted a radical change. And in fact, what those revolutionaries, those coup plotters wanted was to mop out those people, okay, and bring in a socialist expert, which was Awolowo at that time. At that time, the best socialist leader that we have, who was the closest to what those revolutionary soldiers, Ademoyega, the Ifeanyi Ajuna, what they believed in was a Marxist, where everybody in the country will have a common goal and it will be an egalitarian society. So their intention was to ensure that they bring in that guy in, Awolowo. But when immediately that thing happened, the campaign started in the north, and then they struck back some months later. They struck back. And that campaign, that stigma stuck. That was the reason. Those things were the things that led to the Biafran War when that campaign started. Because immediately the campaign started, the main actor who ensured that campaign succeeded is that man who is still living today. That man that got an Igbo woman impregnated because of his personal hate for them. He denied that son. He denied that boy because his mother is an Igbo woman. Until the woman said, this boy is your child. Over 30 years later, when the boy grew up, when they conducted a DNA test, that was when Yakubu Gowon now accepted that child. That, oh, I apologize. Indeed, this boy is my son. That same Gowon was the one that carried out the pogrom against these people because of his lack of leadership. And ever since that Biafran war was carried out, no Igbo man has ever remained the same in this contraption called the British prison, Nigeria. No Igbo man has ever regained its political relevance because they are now at the mercy of the Fulani oligarchs. We can see if we were in a Senna climes where there is no tribal sentiment, where there is no ethnic coloration in our politics, we can agree that Peter Obi might have won that election. Because there wouldn't have been campaigns of Igbo must go. There wouldn't have been campaigns of Igbos are the ones that carried the 1966 coup in the north. There wouldn't have been such. Because if you want to look at it, all tribes have committed one atrocity or the other. Yes, in the southwest, they have committed their own atrocities. Of course, in the north, they have committed their own atrocities, even more than any other region. Do we want to talk about the religious intolerance of the northerners? How they keep on annihilating? Well, how they keep on carrying out what we call ethnic cleansing along the southern parts of the north into the middle belt? Are these atrocities not even egregious than what happened in Biafra? But you see, because there has been an agreement, an unholy agreement, because they not want to sustain that hegemony, that political relevance. Of course, they would not have achieved all these things if the British, and those guys are so devilish, if the British never gave them that media support, military support, those things wouldn't have fly. If you go into the archives of history, you see how that things played out. Today, those Islamic and those Fulani leaders are calling Ibrahim Babangida a saboteur. They are calling him a sabotage. That, okay, what you are doing is simply psychophancy and eye service. That is what they are saying Habib is doing. That Ibrahim Babangida is not doing eye service. Okay, because say you want, you know say you go soon pame. You know say you go soon pie. Oh, because you think you think you want to be holier than thou. You are seeking heaven. In fact, the northern leaders are now calling out IBB atrocities left, right, and center, telling him, okay, you are unalive, you shut down the plane of over 160 bright mind soldiers. You can't just carry out a book and start running an agenda just because you want to bloat the ego of the Igbos. The aid, which is unnecessary, but which has almost come to stay, has always been pushed by these people. You cannot go to the north and you say you are an Igbo man. And if you have conversations with the northerners, that, well, an Igbo man will become a president in this country one day, they just look at you and they crank. They look at you and just look at you. You're deceiving yourself. Is it the same Igbos that killed our elders in 1966? It's not going to happen. They'll tell you they can never trust an Igbo man. Go all over social media. Go into the social media as at 2022 and go and search on Facebook, on Twitter. Just because IBB has now come out to expose that, well, actually that coup shouldn't have been tagged an Igbo coup. It was only called so that we in the north can remain relevant in the Nigerian politics. We discovered that the Igbos were the prominent ones in the Nigerian army at that time. We discovered that the Igbos were almost everywhere in the civil service, and we needed to run a campaign. The mistake they made was that most of those people that engaged in that coup had Igbo names. Most of them were from, the leader was from the Niger Delta State. The second leader was a Yoruba man. But nobody talks about Ademoyiga. Because the agenda was agenda. That it was the reason why they kept on singing that chorus, that it was an Igbo coup. Will the IBB exposition finally zero out that agenda? I have been seeing how hard some youths, especially some Igbo youths who are in diaspora, have been running campaigns to expose the agenda that was run by the Fulanis. Will it stick? Will this deflate that belief? Will it cancel it? I hope it does. But to be realistic, I think that story has been deep-rooted and deep-seated into the nerves of so many Northerners. In fact, so many Northerners don't want to believe otherwise. They just want to go with that and run with it because they know that it hurts their political existence. They know it helps them score political gains against their southeastern counterparts. Come 2027, I understand these are the things that they will use again. What is the way out? Understand that this is why the Igbos do not believe in one Nigeria. Majority of them are tired of this. Maybe an IBB can release another book. Or maybe he can have a world conference where he can make it not in book this time, but orally. Maybe where he can say it. And then lastly, a Yakubu Gowon must also say the side of his own story. Because I believe where he was the major protagonist. Oh yes, Gowon was the major protagonist in that war. The Biafran war. He needs to tell his story. He needs to say what happens. He needs to apologize. There has to be a thorough atonement. There has to be a national apology. But I don't think this diversity in national unity, I don't think it's possible. I think it's a facade. Because I have always of the notion that, no, I don't think any nation can be built on secularity. For me, I don't think any nation can be built on national diversity if everybody is not duly respected in the Constitution. The only nation that we can say has been built on national diversity and they were successful because it was only clearly stated is Switzerland, wherein the president is more or less like a figurehead. Every region has to control its resources. Those are the demands of the Nigerian people. Those are the demands of the Middle Belters, the Southwesterners, the Southerners, and the Southeasterners. I don't think the Biafran people are standing on the podium of it's either Biafra or we die. No. I think they will take this idea of regionalism. They will gladly take it. That is why we have to push for a national referendum. That is why we have to come together as common people in the South, in collaboration with the Middle Belters, that whatever resources that we have, let us control it. Let us be in charge. We might not necessarily seek for a change of the name of Nigeria, but we can seek for a change of our fiscal federalism. We can restructure. And we know that those that have always been against this restructuring agenda, that have sometimes been pushed by this administration of Tinubu, we know that it has been the Northerners. We saw what they did with the tax reform bills. In fact, the tax reform bills is still in conversation today. Those that are aggressively against it have been the Northern oligarchs, the likes of Ali Udume. I mean, we can name it. Name most of all the Northern. We saw what Zulum also said. He said the tax reform bill will not work. And don't forget that they are the ones that are running a campaign that alcohol should be banned. So you can see we do not respect ourselves. There is what we call open exploitation of other regions. And that will not allow the country to advance and progress. So when the likes of IBB come out and expose what actually happened in 1966 coup, and some elements who have been benefiting from the campaign of calumny against the Southeasterners come out and tell, no, your book has to be banned. What kind of rubbish is that? Why will you come out and start saying it wasn't an Igbo coup? Something that we've all grown up to agree and accept. Then we know that this country will indeed never move forward for as long as we do not agree to respect ourselves. We do not agree to respect each individual's interest. For as long as we do not agree to know that this is our boundary. For as long as we do not agree to say that I will eat what I work for, not you eating from what I work for, then we will never move forward. And indeed, which will be inevitable, the outright disbandment or dissolution of this country is imminent. Bye for now.